Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with my co-host, Nassau Community College student, Jess Sanchez.
Today, you're about to learn about the Franklin Square Historical Society and the Franklin Square Museum, both with the goal to preserve the Franklin Square community's rich history.
Our guests today are Nancy Youngfert, the Vice President, and her husband, Bill Youngfert, who is the Secretary of the Franklin Square Historical Society. Bill and Nancy, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
I think so, too.
Now, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and have you always lived in Franklin Square?
Always lived in Franklin Square, taught around Long Island, but have been retired for almost 20 years now. And we've been members of the Historical Society for that long, at least. But until we retired, we really didn't have the time to do as much as we're doing now. And we've managed to open up the museum, so we're excited about that. We've had our first class in there. All the fourth graders in the 3 elementary schools in Franklin Square came in. They were our guinea pigs, and we did lessons with them, and I think they were very successful. The kids enjoyed the place.
What got you into running a historical society?
Well, I'm not exactly running it. I started off, I went to a meeting one night, and they needed someone to do baskets for their gala, the baskets that they raffle off. And I stupidly put my hand up and said, "Oh, I can do those baskets. How many do you need?" And they said, 5 or 6. 40 baskets later, we were on the road. And Paul eventually said to me, "Well, you're good at those baskets. Maybe you'd like to be vice president." I don't know how those two things collided, but they did.
Must have been really good baskets.
They were great baskets.
And you told us before the show, both of you are teachers.
Yes.
And teachers always have an amazing array of skills. Not only are they great up as public speakers, getting the information to us, but they all have secret skills we learn about, like you and making baskets.
Making.
Basket, remember that in case you need a basket.
If you ever need a basket for an event,
there you go.
Just let me know.
Thank you, I will. When was the Franklin Square Historical Society formed?
Well, it goes back to 1979, actually 1976, when the bicentennial was being celebrated in Franklin Square. There was a group of people that got together and they said, we really want to do something special to really commemorate the bicentennial. So they got together, this group of people, and they constructed a gazebo on town land, the parkland of Rat Park, and they created this beautiful gazebo. And they said, okay, now that we have this gazebo, maybe we should start thinking about maybe having a museum. So they started collecting artifacts, collecting, and it was stored in one of the elementary schools, moved to another elementary school that had space, and finally they realized we really need to have a museum. And so they started raising money to build a museum on Town of Hempstead land. And it took years and years and years of money raising penny drives at local schools before they had enough money to begin thinking about the foundation for the building. But it took years, 15 years to build the building. Wow. But it's a beautiful building. It's one of the unique Historical Society buildings on Long Island because it's a brand new building. Most historical societies are in older houses that are constantly need maintenance. We have a brand new building. We were so happy to have it built. And Nancy and I only really got involved, as she mentioned, later on in our lives. But these people have been working for years, collecting and managing and collecting archives. So it's been an awesome undertaking for over 15 years.
I can tell you one of the happiest people to see that museum open was Paul Van Wey's wife, because Paul had the garage stuffed with things. He had the basement stuffed with things. And I think when he managed to move it all out and get it over into the museum, she couldn't believe how big her house actually was to have all of those things out of the house and back in a museum where they belong. So it's been a journey.
In a reverse way, she got a new house.
She got a new
moving
house.
All that stuff out. Remember that, Jess. That's a good tip. No, that really is interesting. And I guess all of us, we don't realize what goes on behind. We see a member come up at any event,
right,
and they're the president or some officer of the organization, whatever it is. But how much goes into it? Just them giving that much space. If you had to rent it, I think
Yeah.
if you went to one of these public storage places, it's a couple $100s a month
Absolutely.
that you would have to pay. And
Yep.
for them to give up their garage, I'm sure it was an inconvenience, and they probably didn't think much of it at first. It's a box or two or a suitcase, and then, see, again,
Yeah,
another
the
lesson.
bin.
Don't ever say yes. When you go to these clubs, they're going to hook you into it. So
The joke in Paul's family is he had church pews that were given from the St. Catherine's Church in Franklin Square. They were going to throw them out, and Paul said, no, we'd like to have them for the museum. So he stored them in his garage for years. And the joke was when the kids were misbehaving, he would send the kids out to the garage for time out on the pew in the garage.
and I bet he was forever sorry during those years that he volunteered. Church pews are large.
Oh, yes.
He must have a good-sized
Oh,
garage.
yes.
Now, how many members are in the society?
Well, it depends on whether you want to know the actual dues-paying members or the people who are interested and have come and seen it and gone, I can't believe all this stuff you've got here. Tell them how many members.
Yeah, I'm in charge of membership recruitment and membership tallies and records. We have 135 members right now. But we really anticipate that once we can get people into the museum, now we're starting to have people take tours, we expect our membership will double very shortly.
Oh, that's very cool. It sounds like a very huge building. I mean, you're going to need it if you're going to have that many people. So where is the Franklin Square Museum located?
It's at 861 Maple Avenue in Raft Park in Franklin Square.
Okay. And when and how did that get built? Like, how long ago? And
Well, they started the collection back in 1976, but it took 15 years to actually build the building. And the interesting story was that they were trying to raise money, penny drives and things. Mm-hmm. And then we got a phone call from Senator Kemp Hannon, who was one of our greatest supporters. And he decided that, I can give you some money, $50,000, but you have to use it within 3 months. So then there was a big rush to actually get the money spent and build a foundation and the concrete blocks for the walls of the museum. But of course, they didn't have enough money for the windows and the doors, so those openings were boarded up for quite a few years, and people in the community used to drive past this building and say, what is going on and why is it taking so long? But the members of the society refused to take a mortgage out. They wanted to fund every bit of it so there'd be no mortgage payments later on. Yeah. So they managed to do it in 15 years.
Wow.
Jess, that's so interesting on many levels, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but,
no, you're good.
If I pass a hole in the ground, I always think, somebody started and either they went bankrupt or something about it is illegal, they're over the boundary line.
Right.
And not terribly illegal, but something technical that they have to straighten out. And here you guys, the good news, $50,000. The bad news, build it within 3 months.
That's right.
And I was trying to think, how could you ever do that? But you did the smart thing. You got it started, which you got to use the money. Why waste it? You realize what things cost, but now you've got a hole in the ground, some cement, probably some building tools in there, and you got to raise more money. Otherwise, honestly, you have an eyesore, and it's a bit dangerous that kids play on it or something.
Well,
happens.
they had already with some of the money that they had raised, they had already had the permits, they had the architectural drawings, they had the slab put in. But we're on a slab because not only is it part of Rath Park, but it's also a part of what would be a swamp or a sump. Mm-hmm. So they filled in, put a culvert underneath, so we've only got about 18 inches of soil there. And then once they got the $50,000, it was, hurry up, get those cinder blocks in and start building. That's what they did.
That's great that you did it, but it is an interesting story. And as I said, when you think of it, if I pass something like that and I see it standing, because I'm guessing after that it had to stand for a while.
It did.
Till you collected the other money.
Right.
And that's going to be my next question. How did you actually raise that money? Was it raffles? Was it a donor in town who just...
We have a couple of donors who have deeper pockets than some of us. And every year they were holding a gala where they would celebrate some almost famous person in Franklin Square. And that usually raised, I think, between $7,000 and $10,000 a year. And so that money immediately went to buy the doors, get a window, put a roof on, whatever they had to do in order to sort of secure it. And that's how they put it together. It took them a long time to do it, but my goodness, they just kept at it until they had it finished. And it's great.
Each of the windows of the building were donated by each of the elementary schools in the district. So there's a real partnership with the community.
Right.
The Boy Scouts put down the floor tiles, did the painting. The Girl Scouts wanted to do something, so they came up with these really They came up with these chandeliers that were on an old bank that we've got, and they actually paid for the rewiring of the lights and put all LED bulbs in them. So it's been a community effort with the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, schools, all the community groups really helped out.
In many respects, when you think of that, it is really great that not only do the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and community groups help, but they put their labor into it, not just some money, but they actually put their labor into it. And it is a historical society, part of the town. And they are part of that town, and they can tell their relatives forever. I mean, even if they move, I helped build this historical society.
And we have members that are all over the country who have used to live in Franklin Square, have moved, retired, whatever. And they're getting in touch with us. He just sent out one of the Afghans. It pictures all of the famous buildings in Franklin Square. You can imagine how small the quilt is at that point. But we're sending them all over the place.
Who makes those? I'm just wondering.
We had a company that did it originally about 15 years ago for the Historical Society who went out of business. So we wanted to redo it again this year. We found another company who bought the design work in South Carolina, and they produced the Afghan, reproduced it again for us.
I think that's really cool because if I was a resident there, it would bring back memories, whether it's the old pond, the church, the ball field, the school, whatever else there. So I think that's a good fundraiser and something.
Yeah. Well, we did bricks that were engraved, so we've got all of those around the flagpole. And the event that's going to happen, I don't know if I want to call it an event, but the thing that's going to happen on Friday, we've got an Eagle Scout who's building, along with some of the other Boy Scouts in his troop, 4 raised bed gardens over there. Because that part of Franklin Square was originally, besides being a German community, when the Italian immigrants moved in, it became small acreage truck farms. So they raised the vegetables, they trucked them into New York City, and they sold them. So what we're going to try to duplicate, first of all, in one of the beds are some of the grasses, because it's part of the Hempstead Plains. And we're the only plains that's east of the Great Plains, east of the Mississippi. So they're going to duplicate one of those. And then in the other 3 beds, we'll put in vegetables that they would have been growing and trucking into the city. So the kids get a chance to learn what was growing there, what would have grown, and how to grow it, which would be very interesting, I think. As
agree.
A gardener, I like that kind of stuff.
You're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Jess Sanchez, along with Bill Horan, and today you're learning about the Franklin Square Historical Society and the Franklin Square Museum, both with the goal to preserve the Franklin Square community's rich history. Our guests today are Nancy Youngfert, the Vice President, and her husband, Bill Youngfert, who is the Secretary of the Franklin Square Historical Society.
Can I tell you a funny story? At least I think it's funny. Yeah. When we started moving everything into the building, we had no display cases. They had a couple that they had down in, I guess, the basement of Washington Street School. But Bill and I were over in Sears, over in Garden City. I was looking for a winter coat. And we saw that they were going out of business. That's why I was there looking for a winter coat. And they had all of their display cabinets on sale. So we went home fast. We called Paul up. We said, we think you should go over there and take a look at those. They're lighted. They're nice. And he went over and he bought 5 from the, I guess it was from the jewelry area. And the 2 groups in town, Krause's Funeral Home and
Franklin Funeral Home.
The Franklin Funeral Home, they paid for those 2 sets of, so between the 2 of them, it was $500, and they contributed that money. We put a plaque on it, and it's from the Franklin Funeral Home mostly. The rest of the stuff, we found it online. Ellen, Paul's wife, said, I found 6 upright cabinets, but we have to go get them. So Bill with his car, me with mine, Ellen with hers. We went to Baldwin, I think, and got 6 of these glass cabinets. They rattled so much all the way home in the car. I was positive we were not going to get them there in one piece. So we got behind each other, and we we put on our blinkers like we were a funeral procession, and we went down the main roads at 20 miles an hour, rattling these things all the way down until we got them to the museum, and they're perfect. They're great for this stuff that needs to be displayed at eye level.
Tell the truth. Nothing broken?
Nothing broken.
Okay, you both look like honest people. So
Yes.
I think we can believe them, Jess, but not even a little piece on the top there or something.
We're going to have to go in person and see.
You'll have
Come
to
and
check
see.
it out.
Come and see.
I think that's what they want us to do.
So how exactly did you come up with the idea for each exhibit? Like, where did they all come from?
Oh, we depend on Paul for that. Paul is the historian.
What is Paul's last name?
Paul Van Wey.
Oh, okay.
He's well known throughout Nassau County. I think he's on the Historical Preservation Committee. I think that's the full name.
He's a town historian for the town of Hempstead.
And we're lucky that he lives in Franklin Square and that he's been collecting this stuff probably all of his semi-adult life. He would go and talk to all of these older community members from the old houses. He'd talk to them, and eventually they'd give him stuff that would go in his garage, where it stayed for about 20 years until it was time to put it all in the museum. So we're lucky that we have him, because his knowledge of what Franklin Square was and what's there is encyclopedic. I mean, I know a little bit of it, but if you want to know the real down-to-the-earth details, you want to talk to Paul.
No, I'm just thinking, as Jess asked that question, does anybody ever leave you things in a will? And if so, did you ever find, it's like that mysterious baseball card that's worth, where you hear about it, that is worth $1 million. My cards are worth 3 cents, and they were 5 cents when I bought them, so I'm losing money. But, there's something that was the first clock in the town, or the staple from the church, or the cross, or something that's really unique and would have some financial value, let's say.
We do have something very unique. Well, actually, we have several unique things, but the one that comes to mind is there was a big hotel in Franklin Square. It was on Hempstead Turnpike and New Hyde Park Road. It was called the Calb Hotel. And we have a member of our society who was a descendant of that family. But in that hotel, it was a big hotel. Remember now, dirt roads and Hempstead Turnpike, horse-drawn carriages. And there was a bar on the first floor. On the second floor, there was a ballroom with a player piano. And the third floor was hotel rooms you could rent. This was a major stopover between Jamaica and Hempstead. And they had a fire in the hotel, unfortunately. And the whole building went to the ground. They couldn't stop the fire. There was no fire department in town. And the next day, there was a butcher next door, Max Tamala, who was walking around through the ashes of the fire, and he found these coins that were all fused together in the fire. What happened was when the player piano crashed to the ground, the coins fused together, and he found the coins from that player piano in the Calb Hotel, and they have, in a point of reference in our showcase, we have the coins that were from that hotel fire.
That kind of stuff is always amazing to me, and I find it very interesting. I don't know if the average person does, but when you go to any town, they tell you something about the background, or it's the counter from the local bar, or again, a parcel from the church, or a piece of material, something that goes back to the early days, or the blacksmith shop, et cetera, et cetera. So
we have the first telephone that was in the Franklin Square that was in the Calb Hotel. It's an old type of crank phone. We have it in the museum also on display.
The original one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm just wondering, does any of the auction houses or anybody come in and say, that really is, if you wanted it, it's worth X
I'm sure the appraisals would be out of this world, but no, we have not gotten that.
Okay, no, because that really sounds, financially, not that you're doing it for that reason,
right.
But in a group of things, there's always something that comes out and you say, wow, now people really like either the older telephone or a baseball card or a picture that may have historical significance. So.
Sure.
We have a refrigerator. I think is it a refrigerator or a freezer?
There's one refrigerator and one freezer.
And Barbara Calb was walking one day and she saw that someone had put this out on the street for pickup. And she ran home fast. She called her son to come with his pickup truck. And then she went and she stood by. She wouldn't let the garbage men take it until her son got there, and they loaded it on the pickup truck and they brought it over to the museum. So Barbara basically stood in the way of destruction by standing there on the street and making sure that thing got to the museum.
You know, that's one of those cute pictures that there's a series of books, and they have each town of Long Island. You've probably seen them. Glen Cove, Garden City, I'm sure Franklin Square. And I can just picture that. And it is a part of the history of the town. Right. Some lady standing by a refrigerator saying, don't touch it, waiting for somebody to pick it up as a donation to the Historical Society. Right. But that's part of real life. And I guess the more we're learning, that's the way these historical societies and organizations grow and get these things.
We're lucky that between Paul and the older people in the community, they had the forethought to begin to save some of this stuff, because a lot of communities just get decimated. I mean, some sort of construction company comes, they tear down all the old stuff, they build new things, and everything gets lost. So we're lucky that Paul was a person who ran around town and just collected stuff.
Yeah, you definitely seem to have the right people going there.
Absolutely.
You're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Jess Sanchez, along with Bill Horan, and today you're learning about the Franklin Square Historical Society and the Franklin Square Museum, both with the goal to preserve the Franklin Square community's rich history. Our guests today are Nancy Youngfert, the Vice President, and her husband, Bill Youngfert, who is the Secretary of the Franklin Square Historical Society.
Folks, if someone is looking, we've talked about it and it really sounds interesting, but I'd like to let them know if they want to know more about it, when you're open, how to get there, do you come in a large group, is it only Saturday mornings or something? So if someone is interested now and says, gee, I'd really like to see it, or I'd like to contact you, you might like this piece of memorabilia, kind of give us a commercial.
Sure, we're training docents right now, but we don't have set hours at the museum yet. We anticipate setting hours very shortly. But if people call me, 516-775-7260, we do tours right now by appointment, only right now, but we do anticipate hours, at least by the fall for sure, that we have set hours at the museum. And it is a lovely resource that I encourage people to come and see. We'd love to have visitors.
And I'm going to give you an opportunity now. If, by the way, is there a website or someplace else we should know about that we can find out more?
Yes, please visit our website. It's at www.fshistoricalsociety.org. And it has a lot of the information about upcoming events and lots of pictures of some of the artifacts that are also on display.
And if someone is out there and they're really interested in history, or they just find this very interesting, maybe a longtime resident of Franklin Square, are there opportunities for people either as volunteer or employees, or are you looking for people?
We are definitely looking for people to volunteer. We'd love to have as many as possible. You know, one of the things that happens when you become interested in this kind of thing, it's usually in your retirement, and it's usually when you're a little bit too old to be climbing ladders and doing stuff like that. So we're looking for younger members. And not that I want to discourage anybody of any age from volunteering. The entire COVID lockdown, he was at the museum most every day, climbing up on ladders and hanging stuff up on the walls and putting the displays together. Paul would leave messages. He'd go over, hang things up. I called one day. I said, where are you? What are you doing? He says, I just put up the wagon wheel. The wagon wheel's 20 feet up. He was on a 20-foot ladder in the museum by himself, which made me a little nervous. And now we need some younger people to help us. We've got a couple of sheds outside that we store stuff in. We've got 25 steps easily up to the attic where we have stuff stored. When the Gap was closing their store over on the Miracle Mile, we bought probably 7 or 8 mannequins that are heavy, but we have an awful lot of costumes and textiles that we have the ability to dress these mannequins and put on displays of war uniforms, Army, Navy. It's a fascinating place. We've got 100-year-old wedding dresses that could be displayed. But we need help.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you had me there because I'm thinking, what are you doing with mannequins? Where these aren't historical mannequins, no. But you have to show the garments for the period of time.
Yes,
and you brought it through. So that's what I find interesting is someone from the outside, like myself, asking these questions. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and aside from raising the money and getting the actual facility, you have to get the artifacts and bring them in there, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm the quartermaster. I'm the person who finds the least expensive way of doing something, and then we try to make it happen. When you look in some of the historical catalogs for buying stuff. Mannequins, counters, everything is extraordinarily expensive. But if you can get them for $15 from the Gap, why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you had me there. I'm thinking, what did you buy from the Gap that ties into Franklin Square? I couldn't figure it out, so I'm glad you answered that question. Jess?
So I hear you have plans to collaborate with local school districts to see if the museum can become part of their curriculum through field trips.
Yes, definitely. We have a close relationship. The superintendent of schools comes over. He saw the building, definitely wants to make it happen. So we will be doing tours again in the fall with every fourth grade school class, for sure.
What are some of your future plans for the museum?
I'm glad you asked that
I
question.
see you beaming now. There must be something going on.
Well, the building is finished, the displays are in, and now we need to add on. I mean, as soon as you finish a building, you know that what did we not add on? And what we didn't have money for, or really maybe even forethought for, was an educational space that's devoted to the kids. So that's our next fundraiser opportunity. Hello, everybody out there. We can add a piece onto the building that would be a room dedicated to the school kids for setting up the displays. We have butter churns. We'd like to have them use those and see how hard it was to actually make enough food to feed yourselves. Most of the day, the women spent creating the food, milking the cow, churning the butter, doing everything that needed to be done so there was a meal on the table at night. So we want the kids to experience that kind of thing. And we need to add an addition onto the building. We have the space exactly where it needs to be. There's even a patio out there that we can build over the top of. And now it's just a matter of getting that up and running.
You know, it sounds like that's a call to any local politicians, any movers and shakers in town.
You got it.
Anybody who might have just access, like you said, sometimes it's the store that's selling something or may be able to offer you something that gets it started or covers a big piece of that. But I think that would be wonderful because I'm thinking, as you're saying, the lady of the house making butter. We think of going to 7-Eleven or Stop and Shop, and that wasn't the way they did it, years ago.
Nope.
Yeah, you had to put in the work and effort.
That's right.
to
Milk
make
that
everything.
cow.
Yep.
Cool it down.
Trying not to get hit. So what are some annual events you plan to hold at the museum?
Well, we got a big one coming up. October 1st, we're going to have our annual Fall Fest. We had it last year, and then prior to COVID, we also had it. So it's a big event. People come from all around. We have garage sale vendor space. We have food. It's a wonderful day to just get together in Franklin Square, the whole community. And we had it last year, and we're going to have it again October 1st. Rain date is October 2nd. The entire grounds will be filled with things to see and do. And in addition to that, we have a December event. You want to talk about?
We're partnering with the Franklin Square Civic Association, and we're going to be doing a Light Up the Square weekend. We were hoping to make it all happen on one day, but the firemen have their own events that they do, so we're working around them. And what we'll be doing is lighting our 9-foot Christmas tree. We have it inside the building. We've got German ornaments that we've been collecting and selling to the community, and they've been buying them as a tribute to the museum. So we've got about 60 of those right now. We need another 60 or so to really make the tree look old-fashioned German. We are not lighting any candles on it. The tree is already electrified. We have a great big creche scene that we bring in. We've got a fireplace, so we're celebrating Father Christmas. The shoes go by the fireplace, and the stockings get hung by the chimney with care.
Yeah. Nancy, thank you so much. You've been so informative today and really make it sound like a fun place. We'd like our audience to know that we've been talking with Nancy Youngfert, the Vice President, and her husband, Bill Youngfert, who is the Secretary of the Franklin Square Historical Society. Thanks so much for being with us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Jess Sanchez. We thank you for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.